leaving those folks with seeking alternate routes or with a very soggy, slow ride trying to make it through that water. Look at the storm reports from over the weekend. Plenty of hail, plenty of wind reports, and again, some of those water issues as well. We had tornadoes. I remember watching on Friday, we had our tornado from Charles Peak, and we kept things going over the weekend. Now we've got rain showers working off the coast, so a few showers and storms between Victoria and Beeville. Those are making a beeline for the Gulf of Mexico, so not a ton of real estate to work with those. Today, it's farther south that we watch for the best opportunity for strong to severe thunderstorms. So looking at portions of High 2, 69E, McAllen, Brownsville, those would be areas at greatest risk. But Corpus Christi can't rule out an isolated severe storm for you. Future radar, you can see those storms get going by early to mid-afternoon. By 3, 4 o'clock, you can see they're really firing down across South Texas. Big hail, gusty winds possible. And just like what we saw in those videos, you could also be up against some really heavy downpours. So keep that in mind for travel plans later today. Houston area, you've got the showers and thunderstorms generally off to the south, but wouldn't rule out an isolated opportunity here through the afternoon. Heavy downpours will likely be on the west and south side of town for the late day drive. Again, that could slow you down. Windshield wipers working overtime. Mike?
Thanks for that. We certainly know that
across the country, including the West. Well, we've got a lot more to come on Weather Underground. Dr. Nab is Florida. A lot of you already have because of how often you have been using the windshield wipers. Today, no exception. We got to watch for the opportunity for some isolated severe stuff. It would be across the southern part of the state and the southwest. So kind of looks like a smiley face, but I know that's not how you're feeling. Marco Island highs near 87, 89 in Miami, West Palm Beach 84. But obviously with some of those showers already drifting south, that's going to take those temperatures down a notch. Here's a closer look at the areas in that we'll be inspecting with a little finer toothed comb, right? Opportunities from West Palm Beach to Miami along 95, 75 over towards Naples, Fort Myers, and then up towards the Sarasota area. Siesta Key, you're a spot that could see some spicy thunderstorms as we move through the afternoon. So you may be clearing the beaches. I know not what you want to see if this is your beach week, but again, I think it's scattered. So you've got opportunities in many of these cases right now. You just have to watch for those skies to get a little dark. As we move towards the second half of today or the mid to late afternoon, that's when things really get firing, especially in West Florida. Obviously, we've already got some activity showing up, so the future radar not latching on to that. But I think a little bit more coverage here during the early afternoon from West Palm Beach down to Fort Lauderdale. Overnight, much quieter. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll do it all again. A closer look at the Tampa area, St. Pete as well. Again, showers and thunderstorms firing up. There's Siesta Key and Sarasota. Yikes, 5 to 6 o'clock. May not be eating out on the beach, but if you go to one of those beachfront restaurants, just ask for one of the tables inside by the window. You can watch everything from a safe distance, Mike.
Agree.
A look ahead at the T-Mobile coast-to-coast forecast, starting, of course, with today. Showers and thunderstorms primarily in the middle parts of the country, but obviously looking at South Florida, South Texas as well. Tomorrow, New York's at 78. Cooler temperatures for Portland. You're only in the upper 60s. And we've got rain in San Francisco. We'll keep that going into your Wednesday, but generally into places like Denver, across parts of Montana, Intermountain West. Better opportunities for showers. LA 70 on Thursday. By Friday, we've got 69 in New York City, 87 in Miami. Weekend, middle of the country, going to see more wet weather. The coast stay dry on Saturday, but by Sunday, you can see more wet weather in the Northeast and out west. Welcome back into Weather Underground. I'm Alex Wilson. He's Mike Bettis. We love ball food. I love to hear about it. I like to see what they're doing because ball food,
you love the nachos.
It gets creative. Oh, I'm a huge fan.
But all the ballparks do something different each year to try to suck you into the concession stand.
Because you're like, I've already had all the nachos I could have, and they're like, oh yeah, well what if we put like tots on it?
Yeah, and a banana split.
Yeah. What if it's a dessert nacho? Yeah. And what if
flambe.
It's $38.50? And you're like, well, I have to try it now.
They all try to outdo each other, though, don't they?
Exactly,
And that level of grossness goes up each year, I feel like.
But there's something, it's like, you know, like whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whatever happens at the ballpark, those calories don't count. It's just fun. It's like an amusement park.
Get your steps in around the park or something like that. Right?
Well, we got much more baseball forecast for you coming up. Also, an update to a story that we've been following here at the Weather Channel out of New England. A historic church was engulfed. Well, let's take a peek at what's happening in the tropics. New area to watch that we could possibly be looking at some subtropical development with. Now, we've got this area. It's interacting with a non-tropical area of low pressure. So, again, there is some time here in the short term that we could develop some subtropical characteristics out of this. This is not moving off towards the west, though. This is going to be moving off towards the north. And, again, eventually working into some colder waters. 10% development area. Again, this is off of the Azores, so you can see Portugal off towards the east. Obviously, the coast of Africa, Cape Verde Islands, they're off to the south and east. There is our development area. Again, it's short term that we'd be looking at the likelihood or the possibility of subtropical development. You can see the chances aren't overwhelmingly high, only about 10% right now as this works to the north, headed towards the Azores. Now, this time of year, we oftentimes look close to home, just like what we were looking at last week with Arlene. It's parts of the Gulf, those fronts that work off the southeast coastline where we can see some development, some spin, and that's where we oftentimes get our homegrown tropical systems. Not to say you can't get them out into the Atlantic or into the Caribbean, but again, usually we look closer to home this time of year. And you can see that reflected on our tracks and origins map. Again, area of development would be those spots focused along the southeast coast, generally the Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean, moving to the north and eventually northeast. Guys?
All right, thank you, Alex. All right, so we're fine.
Well, Europe is often thought to be out of reach for many because of the expense, but there are ways to save. Jen Carfagno and our partner Citibank has some advice.
Bucklew, President and CEO of the Hospital Council of Northern and Central California. Brian, it is great to talk to you. Obviously, those numbers are a little alarming, right? What do we do in California in particular to kind of fortify our hospitals and protect them from the wildfire danger?
Yeah, it's a big issue for all of our hospitals.
You mentioned that this study shows that Northern California hospitals are of a special concern. I guess that's due to the fact that there are just less of them or only one maybe for a more sparsely populated area. And obviously, Northern California more susceptible to these fires.
Yeah, most people don't realize how rural
of an evacuation. Obviously, I'm sure there's only so much you can do in terms of fortification. You know, we talked to an East Coast hospital that was trying to fortify for hurricanes. That you can do a little bit better than wildfire, because as Mike pointed out, you can't get people to and from. What kind of, financial burden is this on hospitals to even try to do some fortification?
It's significant, and there's a lot of
I hadn't even thought about some of that, how much the hospital can be compromised after.
And the after may be worse than the before, right?
Absolutely. All right, well, stay with us. We've got much more on the weather.
Coming up here on Weather Underground, it does not feel like summer in the Northeast, no doubt about that. You're watching Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, our expert Dr. Nab with us. Now, the calendar says June. You'll look and you're like, nope, it definitely says it, not a typo, but the weather's kind of a typo. Thumbs down? Icky Poo Nasty scale?
It is. It doesn't even make the Icky Poo Nasty scale in Boston. It is. You're not allowed to have this in June.
Yeah, it does feel. It does feel a little crummy, especially when you look at like the Red Sox forecast. They're like, I would expect this, as you pointed out, in maybe your March or early April.
So now,
first week of baseball, maybe. Not now.
For Boston, you're gonna have to wait to start the baseball season until June 20th or something because it's too cold until then.
It's rough. It's definitely a rough day.
Crazy.
Day. It could be windy at times. We've got your forecast, and it is going to be a shocker, no doubt about that. I'm going to show you two maps, though. One's got a lot of rain on it, some thunderstorms for you as well. Hail and wind going to be a factor, especially across portions of Texas, but watch out in places like Montana as well.
Yeah, if you're south of that front the rest of this week, you're still in the soup and you're going, I would love to go to Boston and cool off.
Right? I was going to say, we see the heat start and then it starts to dwindle as that front sinks south. So maybe what you start the week with may not be what you got the whole week long.
No. Look at that 70s in Atlanta late this week.
I'll take it. I'm here for it. Yay. Sign me up. Yes.
All the kids that just got out of school are like, I'm looking for some pool time.
Right.
They're like 70s and cloudy, ain't cutting it.
I might have to go south. I can't be touched by a cold front this time of year.
That would live on the equator if he could.
Right? You're like an iguana, and I love that about you. Well, this kind of sums up Canada. It's not just eastern Canada, but as we look at the smoke, you can see that plume that extends down into parts of the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. Significant smoke. A lot of you have said, I don't just see it, but I feel it, or I smell it. A very distinct smell. Some people said almost smells like burning plastic out in the air. And that's not what you want when you're out there walking the dogs, running, or taking the kids to the park or pool. Now, air quality, it's up there in an unhealthy range. A place like La Crosse, again, on the 1 to 5 scale, we're at a 4 out of 5 in poor air quality. And the main pollutant, of course, is that particulates that come from wildfire smoke. When you're at unhealthy, again, that's when you're at this 151 to 200 range, very unhealthy. The worst it gets, the next on the scale. So we're past sensitive we're past unhealthy for sensitive groups. We're past moderate. So we're at a point where the air quality is going to be a problem for everyone, regardless of whether or not you're dealing with any of those respiratory issues. But if you do have lung disease, if you do have heart disease, you can see as we go through each stage of poor air quality, the unhealthy air quality, 40 to 50% worse your risk when we've got that level of air quality issue. So you really need to limit your time outside if you have heart disease or lung disease or asthma. And again, honestly, I would probably limit your time spent outside, even if you don't suffer from those, because, again, you go out and it's noticeable. Each and every one of these areas, Mike, shaded in the brown color, that's where the air quality alerts are in effect. So, again, maybe hit the gym, the treadmill, instead of going for the run outside in these areas.
That makes a lot of sense. It's good advice for
the week with big storms. Over the weekend, we've had issues, heavy rain, leading to some flash flooding, and today, no exception, more thunderstorms out there. We've got thunderstorms on the south and east side of Houston right now, more scattered as you get up to the north side of Austin, between Austin and Waco, and then Corpus Christi southward. That's where we have and will see much more coverage of wet weather and stormy weather through the remainder of today. So we've seen these thunderstorms firing between Victoria and Beeville. They continue to work towards Rockport, Riviera. You've got some thunderstorms, some big downpours. But today, I think by mid-afternoon into the evening, we've got to watch South Texas for the best chance of seeing some of those strong to severe storms, the ones that produce the big hail, the gusty, damaging winds. Corpus Christi over to Nye, I-35, portions of I-37, at least an isolated risk of a severe storm for you. When we overlay the future radar, you'll see things really get going in this zone. And again, extreme South Texas by mid-afternoon. That'll continue into the late afternoon. Very heavy downpours could prompt flash flooding. Also the hail, the gusty wind threat, isolated tornado opportunities, and not going to be an easy drive for you anyway, any ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, again, watch for some of those flooded roadways possible in places like Brownsville, Texas. Houston area, we've got the scattered showers around town. Could be an issue for you on the late part of your drive or the late part of your day drive. We've got I-45, I-69. So south side of Houston, I think a little bit more vulnerable to some of those water issues and the bigger slowdowns. So, Mike, plenty of issues for your Monday afternoon commute. So Monday-like.
So Monday-like, right?
Rude.
Now, we've got
more to come on Weather Underground. Dr. Nav, he's going in depth. Again, persistent across sections of South Florida. Actually, even an isolated severe risk for the areas shaded in the red. So that's going to take us right along the coast, sea breeze locations from south of Tampa to about West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. So unfortunately, the severe risk today exists in some of the most populated areas there in South and West Florida. Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota also included. It's an isolated risk, but still, that just tells us a few thunderstorms could get frisky with some gusty, damaging winds. That's what I'd be most concerned about. And again, torrential rain likely. So you may be sitting on Interstate 75. I-95, some of those local roadways, and we could see some localized flash flooding. Now, as we move through the afternoon, you can see how things really get going around and south of the Tampa area into South Florida for your late day drive into the evening. Now, once the sun goes down, we lose a lot of our thunderstorms. Tomorrow morning, a drier commute for you from West Palm Beach to Miami, from Fort Myers to Tampa. Obviously, I-10 from Pensacola all the way to Jacksonville dry as well. But as we take a closer look at this afternoon in the Tampa area, not so lucky. Could see some big downpours, perhaps even some small hail out of these storms. But again, I would be most concerned about those huge wind gusts that are possible out of these storms. It's right during the late afternoon, drive time, dinner time, and then poof, we're done with the thunderstorms. Overnight should be much quieter. Now, these areas need to see the rain. Again, it's just a matter of how fast that rain comes down. So with intense rainfall rates could come some localized flash flooding. But once again, Mike, as opposed to Miami, they've been running well above average. We've been running below average in places like Tampa and Sarasota.
Then there are places we'd
to come on Weather Underground, including details on that thumbs down forecast. We've got details on who else is going to be cooling off. So if you hate it, you're not a game. And now you have the ticket for this one and you go, I don't feel like I've won here.
No, you
I don't
haven't.
feel like anything's being made up to me. I feel like now it's a chore.
You got the game, and that's about it. The weather is a no-no.
You're just going to be sitting there like this.
Yeah.
I want to see the fan cam tonight at Fenway. It's just a bunch of you making stank faces.
The kiss cam is going to be more like the fist cam.
Yeah, exactly. Like, honey, why did you pick this game? Anyway, you're watching Weather Underground. Hopefully we'll cheer you up. But if you are going, please take videos of us, of your fellow fans, and send them to us at Weather Underground on Twitter.
Grumpy weather fans.
I feel like we could bring this tomorrow. It could be a whole segment. Like we could turn it into our Weather Underground grumpy fan segment.
Yes.
It's like our version of
I could be down with that.
Yeah.
I could totally be down with that.
You know what? If you're going to sit there and have a horrible experience, at least weather-wise,
just
at least be on TV for
embrace it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Embrace the grumpy weather. Oh, well, how about this, though? A historic church engulfed by flames after...
Every year, thousands of eager vacationers head to the Caribbean, even during hurricane season. Now, the rewards are great, but you need some smart planning to reduce the risks. Alex Wallace shows us how in this report.
Brian Bucklew, President and CEO of the Hospital Council of Northern and Central California. Brian, it is great to talk to you. Obviously, those numbers are a little alarming, right? What do we do in California in particular to kind of fortify our hospitals and protect them from the wildfire danger?
Yeah, it's a big issue for all of our hospitals.
Mike mentioned that this study shows that Northern California hospitals are of a special concern. I guess that's due to the fact that there are just less of them or only one maybe for a more sparsely populated area. And obviously, Northern California more susceptible to these fires.
Yeah, most people don't realize how rural...
Of an evacuation. Obviously, I'm sure there's only so much you can do in terms of fortification. You know, we talked to an East Coast hospital that was trying to fortify for hurricanes. That you can do a little bit better than wildfire because, as Mike pointed out, you can't get people to and from. What kind of, financial burden is this on hospitals to even try to do some fortification?
It's significant, and there's a...
I hadn't even thought about some of that, how much the hospital can be compromised after.
And the after may be worse than the before, right?
Absolutely. All right, well, stay with us. We've got much more.
All right, coming up here on Weather Underground, it sure does not feel like summer in the Northeast. It is noon lunchtime on the West Coast. Thanks for being with us. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson. Dr. Nab, our expert, here with us. Now, the calendar says it's June, and I fact-checked that. That is apparently accurate. The temperatures, the weather say otherwise.
You know, it's notable when low temperatures dip into the 50s in some places in June. But when your highs don't get to 60, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's bizarro world right now, no doubt about that. It's got a complicated pattern going on in the Northeast and the Great Lakes. We're going to talk about that. But the temperatures are really warm in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I mean, the warmth is there. You may just have to drive from your town to somebody that is enjoying it because other areas really heating up.
Yeah, I think people in the middle of the country are going to send their air conditioning bills to the people in Boston.
Yeah.
It's a fair trade, isn't it? Also watching for some thunderstorms, places like California, Montana, the Carolinas. Heads up for you. We'll have details on that coming up.
Yeah, you know, we think summer, we think going to have a nice afternoon on the lake. This isn't it. Mike did look into the U.S., the Great Lakes, parts of the Northeast, parts of the Midwest. Take a look at that smoke plume headed out of Nova Scotia, again, into the Great Lakes, all the way through sections of the Northeast. A lot of you have taken pictures of it. You know, makes for those really bright and vivid sunrises, sunsets, gives you the dull sky during the day. And, of course, a lot of you have also said, I feel it. I smell it. It smells like burned chemicals, I know somebody said, or burnt plastic or chemically smell. Obviously not ideal for these, comfortable temperatures when you go out and go for the run in the morning. The smoke definitely not doing us any favors. There are 219 fires greater than 100 acres currently burning in Canada. So, again, we've got the smoke problems, but for those folks in Canada, I mean, these wildfires have been devastating and widespread from the western provinces to the eastern part of the country. In a place like La Crosse, Wisconsin, we're out of a 1 to 5 scale. We're at level 4 now for air quality. Unhealthy air quality today with the AQI 160. Wildfire smoke, the main pollutant out there. And again, once we get into the unhealthy range, that's 150 to 200, that's going to really be an issue even beyond those who are, sensitive or vulnerable groups. This is now going to get into an air quality problem for everybody. So you want to limit your time outside, but especially if you've got lung disease, heart disease. You can see as the air quality rises in terms of negativity, we see the effects on those people who suffer from lung or heart disease on the rise here in that 40 to 50% range. So you really have to limit your time spent outside. But again, if I was anybody, I might be spending more time in the gym on the treadmill as opposed to the outdoor runs. Mike?
Yeah, that's probably
radar, and you'll get a sense of where the warnings are in Texas. We also have a severe thunderstorm watch into parts of Texas. It's South Texas today that we're watching for the worst of the severe weather, the gusty, damaging winds and the hail, and that's exactly what we're seeing out of this one. You can see this is fired up, likely bringing some hail, Starr County, including La Rosita, Las Lomas, until 2 o'clock, or rather 2:30 local time for that warning. Here's the watch: McAllen, Harlingen, and Brownsville, as well as portions of South Texas. Anybody shaded in that yellow color until 6 o'clock, you're under that severe thunderstorm watch. That tells us conditions are favorable for storms that will produce gusty, damaging winds and, of course, the hail that gets greater to the size of a quarter or equal to or greater than the size of a quarter. I like how I just turned that all into one little phrase. Possibility of severe weather follows very much in line. So this is the area the Storm Prediction Center was concerned about, and obviously the severe thunderstorm watch right on track in line with those areas that they've been watching. Here's a look at how it shapes up for the afternoon. By mid to late afternoon, a few thunderstorms. Again, I don't think we're going to see a ton, but the ones that we see will be likely severe. Can't rule out an isolated tornado, but again, I think the severe threat, the wind, the hail, is the primary one. Also, really heavy rain. And when you've got torrential rain in this part of the country, really anywhere, these rainfall rates could be especially intense, and that would lead to street flooding. So watching around the Brownsville and McAllen areas for your late day drive. Here is the 3-4 o'clock time frame in Houston. Again, a few thunderstorms bubbling up around town that'll slow you down as you make your way home, especially if you are headed south or west. As we move into the mid and late evening, now newest run of the future radar does show a little more activity on the north and east side as well. So really anybody in the Houston metro area has at least the chance. I think there'll be widely scattered showers and thunderstorms. Some of those could get spicy, though, although, Mike, the best chance of severe weather farther south.
All right, watching for that very close.
Show, Dr. Nab is going in depth on notable hurricanes. My car, it was the only one in the parking lot, so I had to make a trip to the car wash. Maybe you did as well. But there in Miami, it's free. So let's think of the positives, right? Like everybody's car is pretty clean there. We've got more opportunities for showers and storms today. So we're going to keep that going. Obviously, good news if you need, something rinsed off the car. Bad news if you're trying to get home quickly, right? You're like, oh gosh, okay, I've got a haircut at 5:30. I'm done with work at 5. It usually takes 20 minutes. This is not one of those days where you're going to be, just coasting, smooth sailing, because the showers and thunderstorms on those highways are going to slow you down. So be prepared for that. Maybe, give the hairstylist a buzz. Be like, I might be 5 to 10 minutes late. That way everybody gets to, when you slow your roll, you chill. There's nothing worse than being rushed in heavy downpours, because it just makes things even worse. You're rushed. You're trying to keep an eye on things. You've got the ponding of water on the roadways. It's a bad combination. Right now, we've got some rain up and down the I-95 corridor, generally on the light side, but where you see the red shading, that's where we could see some stronger thunderstorms. Isolated severe threat later this afternoon and into the early evening hours. So something to watch for. We have your future radar showing the West Coast lights up first across South Florida. I think mid to late afternoon, it would be more isolated. By evening, a little bit more widespread. And again, downpours likely. So some quick ponding of water on the roadways, some localized flash flooding, and then the main severe threat, Mike, would likely be those gusty winds.
Now, once
toes only, like once you go deeper, you're like in it to win it. Well, still to come on Weather Underground, we've got much more on where cooler air temperatures are going to be settling in a little later this week.
Place in that division, the Rays are in first place. They get the best record in baseball, but the Red Sox still have a winning record. Right. They're above 500.
Right.
So that's just a really strong division.
Absolutely. And this is a makeup game from bad weather, and this is what you got. You were like, oh, okay, I'll come on a better day. And then you're like,
no.
Oh.
But then again, you're like, we'd schedule it for like a day-night doubleheader in July, and it'd be like 100 degrees. They'd be going through a heat wave.
Yeah, I would take this over a 98-degree day any day.
I would too.
No, you can't really enjoy yourself at the ballpark when you're baking. So, all right, well, we welcome you back into Weather Underground. I'm Alex Wilson. He's Mike Bettis. Dr. Nab in the house as well.
All right, so we've got a lot going on here in the Northeast. There's that June gloom. I feel like we talk about that term in Southern California.
Right.
We don't often talk about June gloom in the Northeast. Generally, our weather really gets nice this time of year, but it's going to stay cloudy and cool, and unfortunately, it's going to stay that way for
Yes, you get like a little taste test of it in other parts of the country. Southern California's like, oh, we'd love to share it with you. Would you like to try June gloom?
So that's what Bostonians are saying right now. It's just like Southern California here.
Yeah, it's awesome? Question mark.
Yeah, big question mark on that
well
one
below
for sure.
Well, let's take a peek at what's happening in the tropics. New area to watch that we could possibly be looking at some subtropical development with. Now, we've got this area. It's interacting within a non-tropical area of low pressure. So, again, there is some time here in the short term that we could develop some subtropical characteristics out of this. This is not moving off towards the west, though. This is going to be moving off towards the north. And, again, eventually working into some colder waters. 10% development area. Again, this is off of the Azores, so you can see Portugal off towards the east. Obviously, the coast of Africa, Cape Verde Islands, they're off to the south and east. There is our development area. Again, it's short term that we'd be looking at the likelihood or the possibility of subtropical development. You can see the chances aren't overwhelmingly high, only about 10% right now as this works to the north, headed towards the Azores. Now, this time of year, we oftentimes look close to home, just like what we were looking at last week with Arlene. It's parts of the Gulf, those fronts that work off the southeast coastline where we can see some development, some spin, and that's where we oftentimes get our homegrown tropical systems. Not to say you can't get them out into the Atlantic or into the Caribbean, but again, usually we look closer to home this time of year. And you can see that reflected on our tracks and origins map. Again, area of development would be those spots focused along the southeast coast, generally the Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean, moving to the north and eventually northeast. Guys?
All right, thank you, Alex. All right, so we're fine.
Well, Europe is often thought to be out of reach for many because of the expense, but there are ways to save. Jen Carfagno and our partner Citibank has some advice.
Bucklew, President and CEO of the Hospital Council of Northern and Central California. Brian, it is great to talk to you. Obviously, those numbers are a little alarming, right? What do we do in California in particular to kind of fortify our hospitals and protect them from the wildfire danger?
Yeah, it's a big issue for all of our hospitals.
You mentioned that this study shows that Northern California hospitals are of a special concern. I guess that's due to the fact that there are just less of them or only one maybe for a more sparsely populated area. And obviously, Northern California more susceptible to these fires.
Yeah, most people don't realize how rural
of an evacuation. Obviously, I'm sure there's only so much you can do in terms of fortification. You know, we talked to an East Coast hospital that was trying to fortify for hurricanes. That you can do a little bit better than wildfire because, as Mike pointed out, you can't get people to and from. What kind of, financial burden is this on hospitals to even try to do some fortification?
It's significant, and there's a lot.
I hadn't even thought about some of that, how much the hospital can be compromised after.
And the after may be worse than the before, right?
Absolutely. All right, well, stay with us. We've got much more on the...
All right, in this hour of Weather Underground, it does not feel like summer at all around the Great Lakes or the... Stay with us here on Weather Underground. Welcome back in. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, Dr. Nab here with us. So the whole team with you to tell you that June isn't feeling very like June right now.
It
very
feels
much like June.
Early April, maybe?
Yeah, late
mid-April.
March.
It just doesn't feel great outside today.
You know, that system off the east coast of the U.S. is even changing how it feels in portions of Florida. Northeastern Florida, you've got this relatively stable, cool flow off the Atlantic. So a lot of the eastern U.S. not sweltering at all.
Yeah, and if you are like, oh, no, it's warm for me now, it won't be later. It'll be changing.
No, it's going to be changing for you. Let's show you what's happening today. A few areas of thunderstorms to watch for today. California, Montana, Texas, the Carolinas could all be at risk for some thunderstorms. But for many of you, it's the temperature story that really takes over.
Yeah, because there is that cold front, as you mentioned, sneaking south. So what you have now, not what you have later.
But farther to the south, there's spots in the Appalachians and South Florida, deep South Texas, where we could have some really nasty storms. Deep South Texas is really blossoming with some large hail and damaging winds.
Yeah, we're going to walk you through all of that. We start, though, up into the Northeast, saying you've seen it, you've smelled it, you can feel it as you spend time outside. We look at that plume of smoke from eastern Canada, again, through the Northeast, through the Mid-Atlantic, parts of the Great Lakes, into the upper Great Lakes as well, where air quality has been poor at times. And again, a lot of you have said, yuck, you know, what's up with the very vivid sunrises and sunsets? What's up to the smell of the outside? That is from those fires. And it's not just eastern Canada, but of course, we've been following the situation in western provinces where we've got a lot of fires, over 215 active fires burning across the country of Canada with over 8.4 million acres burned. Now, a place like La Crosse, Wisconsin, again, you think you're well removed from the location of these fires, but we're dealing with unhealthy air quality. When we look at air quality as a 0 or a 1 to 5 scale, this is level